Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Stegner, and thanks for joining. I think this is the fourth episode of these lives, YouTube lives, where I just talk about some teaching things. So once again, as I've mentioned in the past, I will go through the comments and make future videos on the comments, or if you're here in the live, feel free to ask any questions and I'll get to them as we stream. But I'd love to hear from you, get your thoughts, opinions, questions on everything, and I will use it to have future topics based on your comments and questions. So today I want to talk about something that I think should benefit both teachers and parents alike. I've realized over the years that I kind of have a different approach than maybe some other teachers on the idea of motivation. So I just want to talk about that so that we can, maybe have a discussion about it, or I don't know, maybe this will just help you with that. So I'm just checking to make sure that everything's working on the stream. I have some new gear. The microphone hopefully will be better. The lighting's better. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so motivation, I feel like, is one of the biggest things in any kind of lesson experience. And as teachers, I think we need to build that into our curriculum in very creative ways, in ways that aren't necessarily perceived. And I think as teachers, we can only do so much. The parents, a lot of this falls on the parents, and so I kind of want to start with some of the things that I've found help parents in the past with motivating their students to be more enthusiastic about the lesson experience and the learning experience, and in turn makes the student inspired to practice more. I feel like one of the biggest mistakes I noticed parents making when I first started teaching was they would have their 5 or 6 year old child start lessons, and I mean, every time we start something new and we get some little taste of it or some little taste of perceived success, we tend to get excited about it. And that happens a lot in the beginning for students, like when they get excited because they can play their first song, or because they learned how to read something out of a book and play it. They get really excited, and that excitement can really kind of get you through the first 3 to 6 months of lessons, no problem. When things get more difficult and the music gets harder and it requires some grinding it out upstairs to kind of figure out what these pieces are asking them to do, that's when it gets tricky. So we want to talk about like when that happens. In general, for parents, I think one of the most important things in this journey, and it really is a journey, is just to not be too reactionary. They're gonna have some bad weeks, some bad days, some bad months, and just don't react to that like, as a reflex. Just let them have their bad days, let them have their bad weeks, let them have their bad months. It's just part of it. There's no student that's ever had a perfect run of week after week after week for years and years and years of practicing or doing what they were supposed to do. So for parents, if you feel this need to provide a disclaimer like, oh, before they start their lesson, I just want to tell you that my kid didn't get to practice that much because, we went out of town this week. If that starts to become something you're tempted to do, just step back and let them go through the lesson and not be prepared, and just know that you can reestablish the routines and everything will be fine. It's not that big a deal. Now, some teachers, there are teachers who are just super established or super strict, and they just don't have much tolerance for that, and that's fine. That's if that's what you're looking for in a teacher, then you'll be able to find them, and you'll be able to just make that the standard. Or sometimes it's genre specific, like if you teach somebody that kind of runs their studio like a conservatory, then it's going to be a lot of pressure to perform every week. So just that would be one suggestion. Find someone who has like a similar kind of expectation for you and your family as you do. And there's nothing wrong with kind of like investigating teachers thoroughly to find that. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. I also think of it like this, like if it takes so much pressure off the equation if as a parent you think about it as just another subject at school. Like you may have a child that's like very good at grammar and English, and that same student may struggle and even loathe going to math class. But it's not really an option in first grade, third grade, fifth grade to just say, I'm not going to do math. I'm only going to do these things that I like. And I think a lot of times because we think of music as like an extracurricular or as something that's extra, we kind of put a lot of pressure on our child inadvertently, on our children, and on ourselves to make sure it's something that they love it every week and that they're super excited to practice. It's not going to work that way. Some weeks they will, some weeks they won't. Some months they'll just be on this epic run and you'll be listening to them practice from the other room and you'll be like, I can't believe that's my kid. And other weeks, other months, you'll listen to them practice or not practice, and you'll be like, I can't believe my kid sounds like this. This is not good, and I just want to pull him out of lessons. So my thought on this is just take a step back for both situations. Don't get overly excited when they're on this epic run, because it will end. And don't get overly discouraged when they're spinning their wheels. It's going to happen. So if you just view it as like a school subject, the enrichment they get from it, whether they give 100% or whether they give 30% of their max effort, will be worth it in the end. There's a lot of research about it. It will pay off one way or another. They may not become musicians, but it will pay off. And as a teacher, I always think long game. I always think, okay, this is what this kid in front of me can do when they're 6. I don't care what they can do when they're 7, what they can do when they're 9. I'm thinking when they're 17, 18 and go away to college, what can I have established in their personal musicianship that will last them a lifetime so that they will have the capacity to love and enjoy making music on so many different levels by the time they're an adult. That's the way I think of it. And so I get frustrated, of course, if a student doesn't practice for a few weeks, but I've just seen so many students who have a dip. Let's just say reality. I've had students that have like had a dip between ages of 5 and 8 and 9, and then get on this epic roll from the age of 10 to 13, and they have careers in music now as adults. I've seen it, be that extreme. So, and I think most of the musician friends I know from being a professional musician went through those kind of spurts. So that's probably how it's going to go. And so so that's basically, what you can expect as a parent. And as a teacher, a lot of these YouTube lives talk about ways we can build motivation into every little thing that we do. So if I have time today, I'll get into that. But if you have questions, if you're a teacher and you have questions on specifics or even general questions on how to motivate students, then you're more than welcome to leave a comment, or I encourage you to leave a comment, and I'll address it in future videos. So a couple things, do's and don'ts. I hate thinking in those terms, but a couple of things that as a parent, let's just stay with those of you who are parents. As a parent, you can really set the stage for success, or I don't know, I wouldn't say failure, but for making lessons a lot harder than they need to be by doing or not doing a few things. So let's talk about like what you want to try to do. The main thing is that I would say is create an environment at home where music is like essential, where music is fabric of your daily lives. In other words, when you're getting ready for work and you're getting everybody ready for school, are there speakers in the house playing music to get everybody in the right frame of mind, or just to like as a soundtrack to even if it's frantic, getting everybody ready and getting everybody out the door, is it, just some music playing for a soundtrack from that. When people get home from school, from work, people are getting ready for dinner, is there some music you could put on to just be part of your day? That is huge. A lot of people ask me over the years, like what is the common denominator between your all your most advanced students, the ones that are like, get people's attention because they play so well or whatever. And it's just such an easy answer. It's the kids who listened to the most music, that have the most music in their environment from a very young age. It's the best thing you can do. How often do you take your kids to concerts? How often do you show your kids YouTube videos of inspiring live performances? That is just, it's like, I used to play soccer. It'd be like asking somebody to play soccer that has never seen, Messi play, or doesn't watch the World Cup, or doesn't watch any it's hard to just get inspired by a bunch of 5-year-olds. If that's your only exposure. Only time I have ever seen soccer is when I go to my games and see a bunch of 5-year-olds running around chasing the ball. Same thing in music. If your only music exposure is from your piano lesson, or whatever limited music lesson or music classes they have at your school, these days it's limited at least, it's not going to be enough. So that's huge, and that's easy to do. So just having music around all the time, you don't have to ask them questions like, oh, what time signature is this song that we're listening to? What key is this in? What rhythm is that? You don't have to do that. Just have it around, have them kind of immersed in it without realizing. And I'm not talking like hours a day. Like I said earlier, in the morning, in the evening. Some kids like to have like background music playing when they do homework, and there's even research about that, so you could look up that data and see if you can work that in. Just having playlists. If you're a parent and you don't have a streaming service like Spotify or iTunes, Amazon Music, where you can make playlists, where you can highlight favorite artists, it probably is a good idea to think of that as a required material for doing music lessons. So this is really huge, really, really, really huge. The next thing I'm going to say that will be kind of controversial to many, even teachers don't agree on this. But I've tried it both ways. I've had extreme cases. I've had like prodigy level students that were 5, 6 years old who I have seen crash and burn over, a couple years because of this. And I just am adamant about it at this point for any student, and that's a young student especially. Parents are not responsible for practicing with their students. The most probably kind of eye-opening students I've ever taught, eye-opening in a good way, are the ones where the parents were supportive but not hands-on. I've had students, like I said, that were prodigy level where the parents were too hands-on or hands-on at all. And when the student passes the parent, which we hope they do, we hope the students pass us as teachers. That's the whole point of this. The student loses almost all motivation because they viewed it as an activity that they do together with the parent. And as soon as they exceed the abilities of their parents, or their parents get busy or get distracted from work or can't be with them at the piano every day, the student's interest just plummets and they don't continue. Or if they continue, they just are a shell of their former self. So this is a habit that I ask all parents not to get into. I know that at the beginning especially, you could help them. You could really help them, and you can save them so much time by like practicing with them because they're young and they don't know what to do. It's okay to just let them learn at their own pace, let them make their mistakes, let them practice wrong. It's okay. Just hang out in the other room, do your thing, and then when they're done, just congratulate them on finishing their practice, and don't be reactionary to whatever happened in that room. Because sometimes it won't be pretty. A lot of times it won't be pretty. But it's not your job to make them ready for the lesson or to help them prepare. That's a very, very, very big deal. Okay, so one of my friends who teaches like concert pianists, he told me once, he said the only job of the parents is to get their bottoms on the bench. Other than that, they just stay out of the picture. And I really do think that's, based on everything I've seen, that's the best case. So let them be independent. Let them make their own mistakes. Let them make their own discoveries. Just encourage them to do their thing. And your only role is to set aside the time and to set the environment where they can get to the piano. Like if you're super scattered and it gets to be bedtime and you're like, oh, I forgot we needed to practice piano. That really sets a really stressful and negative tone around lessons. Kids absorb that in ways that you don't intend them to. They really perceive that as something is not cool about practicing. I know it sounds kind of heavy-handed for me to say that, but I've just seen that kind of reaction build up over time, not even needing a lot of times. But just, if you forget practice, don't bring it up like that around your kid. Just make sure the next day you just have some time set aside. We're all busy. Everybody's busy. It's going to happen. Again, think about what you would do with math homework or grammar homework or whatever. It's just, it doesn't take much time when they're young. 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. Just set the environment where they get to the piano. If they do their work, and if they want to stay there and improvise or explore, great. Let them. That will only help them in the long term. So that's a big deal. It's just to like, if you start lessons, it's more than just showing up to lessons. It's like going to lessons and also having the time set aside to where this is piano time. You can go in there and practice wrong. All the things I just mentioned about not helping them practice, fine, but just have the time set aside. This in tandem with having music around it will like set them ahead so much further than if those things are not in place in the household. So those are pretty easy things in the scheme of things. So I would recommend to just make sure those are in place. As far as, okay, let's talk about a couple of the don'ts, a couple of the things that I see just backfire and have seen backfire time and time again. One of the most detrimental things parents can say to kids at any age, even if you have a teenagers, this is very tempting to say, but it does not work, so just don't say it. When you say, we're spending all this money on lessons and you're not even practicing, if we're going to spend this much money on lessons and you're not going to practice, we're just going to stop lessons. I'm just going to tell you, financially, that may be a very, very true statement. So I'm not disrespecting the investment because it is a big investment. But that is maybe one of the most detrimental things, you could say to a kid who's taking lessons. That is never like a motivation that lasts more than a week or two. It causes a lot of resentment and it causes a lot of stress, which then snowballs into them not wanting to practice. It never leads anywhere positive. Like I said, it might for a few weeks, which at the time may seem like, oh wow, that thing I said about that we're spending all this money is working. It will work, maybe, depending on the kid and depending on, other factors. But it's not going to work over time. It will eventually work against the situation. So there's that one. And tying into that is rewards. Okay, this one also is for all my fellow teachers who might watch this. If you need to reward your child with ice cream because they practice piano on the days you ask them to practice piano, if you need to reward your students with stickers and prizes because they met certain goals that you set for them, it's not going to serve them for the long haul. Okay? Rewards that are external to the actual activity that you're working on, which is playing music on the piano in my case, they're just not going to work over time. They will also work against what I was talking about earlier, the long game. Like they will keep a kid from making it to 17, 18 in lessons. They will keep a kid from finding their true passion within music. Because they'll start practicing in hopes of getting that ice cream, and they're practicing thinking of ice cream rather than practicing and realizing that they're improving and they're getting a lot better, and they're thinking, oh, I sound really good. This is me. I'm a creative and like, I don't like the word talented, but I'm a creative and I'm an expressive person who is communicating through this instrument that I've put in work on. That is the biggest reward that we could give any student. I mean, as a musician, you hear people come up to you all the time at gigs or after gigs, says, oh, I would give anything to be able to play the piano like you, or something like that. So that is a very common thought. Like when we hear people play something that we would love to play, that's like an ultimate for a lot of people. It's like an ultimate goal. It's an ultimate dream. And here we are giving these students that reward that people like have regrets about their whole life. And we convolute it with ice cream or stickers or whatever. When a kid, I mean, and again, you can refer to the other videos in this series because there's a lot of like motivation stuff interwoven throughout a lot of the concepts that I've talked about and will talk about. But if you can train them at the beginning to feel their accomplishment when they play something at a level where they're very aware of what they're doing, how they're sounding, how they're controlling the instrument, if they're in command over all those things and they're in tune with it, then that feeling of excitement and satisfaction and accomplishment that they get from that is so much more and so much more powerful than what they will get if they get an ice cream after the lesson, a successful lesson. They don't need that. I mean, brain study has shown that like before puberty, kids have a switch that basically is always wide open, meaning they don't need the motivation. Now, if you're a teacher and you have adult students, we need the motivation. Like if somebody's 22 or somebody's 45 or somebody's 65 and they have an amazing lesson, just say, hey, go treat yourself to some dessert down the street at the bakery. Go treat yourself to a beer. That you did an amazing work. See, as adults, we need that. Kids do not need that. So don't bake that into the environment of your home, or I would say even to fellow teachers, like into your studio. It is short-lived. It works against a lot of things over the long haul. So please don't do that. There's so much genuine motivation that comes from the music that you can build into every moment of every lesson and every moment of every practice session at home. That was a pseudo rant. The next one is just simple language concepts. I always have to brace myself for a bumpy ride when parents call the lesson practice. Like, okay, it's time to go to piano practice. That probably should change ASAP. It's an urgent situation to change this. Change it to lesson. I'm going to the lesson or class. If it's a group, it's a class. If it's one-on-one, it's a lesson. Practice is what happens at home. A lesson is what happens with the teacher. The idea is that the students practice on their own and prepare for the lesson, and then the lesson builds on that, because the lesson builds on that, and then that's why it's a lesson. They're getting new information, they're getting new material. And then the practice is what they do when they get home, and they start building on that, like building on the lesson. And if you can get that momentum going where the student's always practicing, even if they're practicing a little bit, that gives the teacher something to build on in the lesson, and then the lessons have their own characteristic that's separate from what happens at home. You do not want to get into a situation where the teacher is in the room practicing for the student because the student wasn't prepared. So it's really important to delineate the difference between practice and a lesson, even at a very young age. It should have a very different energy saying, we're going to the lesson. This is your time to kind of present or perform for the teacher everything that you were asked to prepare. And then the practice is what we do at home, to where you get some repetitions in, or you explore, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what that is. so these are really important things, and I think I'll wrap soon. I'll end with this. Um, the the situations that are the hardest for everybody, parents, students, teachers, is when a student is just really either not practicing for a very extended amount of time. Okay. And I mean, if you're creating the time in the day or a night or morning, whatever, for your child to practice, that probably shouldn't happen on like a really infinite scale, like months and months. It can feel like that sometimes. But sometimes if you lose track of the schedule and you're not able to provide that as a parent, that time, it can really lose momentum and lose steam. And I think that like when those situations happen, you just want to again step back and look at the big picture. This is not ideal. As a teacher, I really don't enjoy this, but sometimes if a family or student is going through a rough patch and they're really trying their best and they have the best intent, it's like just show up to the lesson every week and just see what they can absorb from that, and don't put any more pressure or expectations on yourself. Don't take a break from lessons and come back when things are more chill. It does not work. It actually works, especially if they're between the age of 5 and 10. That's like such valuable time. I'd say 5 and 12. Excuse me. So just let them show up, and then that time, that's actually piano practice, but we still aren't going to call it that. And just let them practice at the lesson, get some new tips, and if they have to play a recital, not prepared, they'll take their lumps. It's okay. Just let them absorb what they can. And then when you kind of get your routines back together, when life gets a little less chaotic, they'll just kind of come around, as long as nobody freaks out. Now, let's talk about the freakouts. When you're fighting, when the student's yelling at you, saying they don't want to do it, when you're yelling at them because they're driving you crazy, it doesn't have to be yelling, but you get the idea. When it's tense, when there's tension around it. This is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but I will say this. Some of my best students ever have gone through this exact scenario with their parents. And the thing that usually got them turned around is for me to just tell the parents, just say, step away. Let them practice or not practice. Let them do what they're gonna do. Don't fight them. If they say they don't want to do it, just say, hey, you're gonna go to lessons, but I don't care what you do beyond that. Like, if that's just the level of involvement, just step away. I know it's counterintuitive, but just step away and just let the teacher work it out. The teacher, that's our job. We should be able to figure out how to get them dialed in. It may take a while, but if there's just a lot of space for them at home, there's no hovering, there's no, hey, it's been too many days since you played piano, you better just back away. Just don't have those conversations. And you may be in the other room fuming, but don't let them know that. Just back away, and then let the teacher work it out. So okay, so that I'm trying to think if I left anything out. I kind of free-formed this because I've had these conversations so many times. I figured this would be something we could talk about off the cuff. So those are basically the pillars, I would say. Let me leave it with one last thing. I lied. This will be the last thing. the way I've seen this play out so many times is that it comes back to the first thing I talked about, is having music playing in the house, having music around. It's so important. But at some point, when they get old enough, I would say 11, 12, 13, that's when it happens. It's kind of urgent for them to find their musical fire. That's what I call it. I said, you got to find your fire. I started saying that to the kids. You got to stop listening to all the music that your parents like. You got to find your own music that you relate to. Because the music, let's face it, pop music especially, is made for 14-year-olds. We have to find their fire. And so as a teacher, as a parent, and they are responsible for this too. They can do a lot of this on their own. They need to be searching and finding music that they love. So you just have to create the environment as a parent. As a teacher, you have to keep reminding them. I keep a running log of all my students who are that age, all their favorite songs. I want to know what they're listening to. I say, what's the top 5 songs on your playlist? And do not tell me what you think I want to hear. Do not say Beethoven. Do not say, I want to know the song that you would have if you went to the gym. I know you love Beethoven. I know you love this jazz tune we're doing. But like, what else are you listening to? What songs are you like not telling adults that you're into? I won't tell your parents. You gotta like encourage them to start finding their fire. If you can do that, they will get the age of like 11, 12, 13 will turn into like just such a golden era in their arc as students. That's why I say don't overreact when they're 4 to 11 or 12, because all you're trying to do is build a foundation. You're just buying time so that when they get to be an age where they get super stoked about something, they'll have all this foundation built so they can apply that foundation to something that they just are so passionate about. And then it's our job as a teacher to help them get there and support them and to make sure that they can play that music that they love so much, play it at the highest possible level. The parent's job gets so much easier at that point. So that is how I'll leave it. If you have students who are approaching that age, maybe have them support them by having them get their own Spotify account. Sometimes I won't even teach a student anything new until we listen to music for a good chunk of the lesson, just so they realize all the cool things that are out there. And the reason I know some of the stuff is because the other students I know are telling me what their favorite songs are. So I'm kind of in tune with what's cool or what's exciting to younger students. And so I'm always kind of like seeing like what really lights this kid up. And when I find it, then I ask them to like find more songs in that style and build a playlist for the next lesson. And then when they start to find it and get momentum where they start to listen to music on their own without any prompting, man, it's so exciting. It's like, and as a teacher, it's so easy. And trust me, as a parent, it gets way easier too when you find out. So that's the deal. 4 to 11, 4 to 12, just show up every week. Don't overthink it. Don't make it out to be this like romantic idea that they got to joyfully run to the piano every day. No, that's not going to happen. Just get the foundation built. Patience, hands off, but create an environment. No rewards. Let them find the reward in the music. And then when they get to be 11, 12, then you just kind of, with some urgency as a teacher, as a parent, and now that the students are older, and as students, with urgency, you start to try to find that spark. All right. If you have any comments, questions, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Please feel free to share this with anybody. My name is Michael Stegner. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. I always forget about that part of this social media equation. But anyway, I'd love to hear from you, and